You want to introduce the film since we're about to see the film?
Yeah, sure. There's a short before. Okay, so yeah, we're going to be watching The Mental State in a little bit. There's a short before, apparently. The Mental State tells a story about a family from rural Kentucky struggling with a mental health crisis and the lack of resources they have to figure it out, basically. So, very excited to screen it to all of you, and very excited, yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, The Mental State. Well, wow. How about that? We've talked a little bit, but I'd like to at least start, James, with you anyway. How about Jance? Why was this so important? I want to ask you how you came about to make it too, but why was this so important for you? Like, to pick a project that takes at least 2, 3, 4 years of your life from start to finish, 5, 6, 27. Why this film? Why is this something that you chose to do and put your heart into?
Sure, yeah. So my second year of film school, I was shooting a short film in Connecticut, not far from where the Sandy Hook tragedy happened. And I just remember we were shooting in a bar that was like a live bar, and I remember the news came on and just completely silenced the room. And just kind of looking back on growing up and in the years since, school shootings and teenage mental health and mental health crises have just been, you know, they've just been around, to say the least, and something that's, I know, has affected my life, you know, indirectly, but just something where, as a kid, you're growing up, at least for me, you know, being in school, wondering if some shit like that might happen. And so I was, sorry for cursing, so I wanted to make a story like that, and then my fiance Remy, who plays Melanie Hansen in the film, the guidance counselor, she had mentioned that her old drama teacher had written a play that, you know, included that part in a story and a lot of these themes I wanted to explore. I met with him, I read the play, and the play was fantastic, and so I based this film off that play. And yeah, just one of those things where you start to fall in love with the characters and really want to tell their story.
So I'm sure, you know, to get these types of performances, I mean, and the casting was great. The whole ensemble cast was really on point with how, I guess they laid the beats out and things unravel, but really bringing life and feeling to all of those individual storylines. But how do you find someone like Jance? I mean, what was that process like?
That's the magic of the casting director. Pat McCorkle and her team, you know, we ended up taking in submissions for casting, and they went through, you know, thousands, and then they sent me a bunch, and I went through all of them, and then eventually I came to Jance, and we, you know, I had him come in for an in-person audition as well, which is very rare these days. And then we met afterwards for coffee and hung out, and Jance can tell about that. Okay.
Yeah, we met at the 101 Cafe in Hollywood, formerly closed. It's closed now. So that's a little sad, but yeah, I mean, I feel super honored to be part of this film. You know, it's not an easy role to give somebody who has basically no credits before that, so it was definitely an undertaking, and I feel blessed that, you know, the cast and crew like entrusted me with this role, and I felt so supported by the director and also all of the other castmates. Like, it was really like a great team that was, we were really like working together. on this whole thing. It's a very collaborative effort.
Yeah, I got lucky with the whole cast, as you mentioned before. We have Blaine, who played Brian Ward in the audience as well, his sort of adversary. Just everybody from top to bottom, we just did that way and got really lucky.
So how do you prepare for it? Because obviously it's a very delicate sort of situation and content that you have to portray to the right people, especially people that are going through mental, issues in their own life. And in general, it's just very delicate subject matter to deal with. So what kind of things did you do, whether it was psychological research, whether it was just investigating these types of characters and yourself, in order to put this on screen?
Yeah, so from my end, it was a ton of research. It was a ton of reading, I don't know, like 30 books and talking to people and going to like sort of mental health awareness, events and fundraisers and stuff, and talking to people who had schizoaffective disorders and disorders that kind of lean the same way that Andy's diagnosis might have. I was very specific to not diagnose him because I didn't want it to become a specific trope of that diagnosis, that this is what happens, and I wasn't trying to generalize what was happening either, or what has happened with other school shootings or with other mental health crises. And so just a lot of research. And I also was fortunate that I grew up volunteering at a camp for children with severe behavioral issues and disabilities. And it's a sort of one-to-one camp, and you get to work with a single camper each week. And, that taught me a lot about, just general behavioral issues and, working with campers and with families who have children sort of like that, Sorry.
I think for me, preparing for this role was pretty intense, but I felt lucky to have been carted off to upstate New York, which is where we shot it. And that town, Syracuse, it's a city. Not just a town, they have buildings downtown. But the point is that I felt very isolated there. We were in a hotel in this very cold place, so you didn't really want to go outside unless you had to. And I didn't really have any time to talk to my friends or family, so I did feel that isolation, similar to probably what Andy was going through during the actual filming of the movie. And another thing is that, this is with all types of acting, but you really can't judge the character that you're playing. So, even though Andy could be considered like a bad person or evil, or maybe, that's not what was going through his mind. He was saving the girl of his dreams, and that's kind of the vision that I was having, I just have to save this girl at all costs, So it was really about just getting into his reasoning for the whole thing.
I'm also I didn't purposely isolate Jance. I didn't lock him in a room.
He actually called me and said he was going to shoot it in Catalina. And then he's like, you know what, I'm going to go freeze in the winter in Syracuse instead. No, I'm kidding. I'd like to open up, there is an after party, and that you're able to also come talk to them and ask some questions after, but I'd like to open it up for anyone that had some burning questions. Anyone? Did I see hands? I thought I saw hands. No? We're just doing this? Did you see that too? Oh. Right there? Yep. You.
So why did you focus on mental health, particularly?
Why did you focus on mental health for the film?
Some of that was just came down to the play, and the play sort of including a lot of themes that, it's tough with school shootings, right? Because, like I said, I don't want to generalize it, but when you go through, like, it's hard to explain how much I read about school shootings, unfortunately. It was like really hard research to go through and do every day. But, again, I don't want to generalize it, and I'm not trying to, like, a lot of those kids that went through it had some sort of mental health issue. Whether it was something really severe or something that was just as clear as, like, this was a kid who was depressed or going through something. And again, I really don't want to stress that, like, somebody who's going through that is going to end up doing that. But this was just a kid who didn't get the chance to didn't have the resources to get the help that he needed to perhaps overcome what was going on. Yeah, thank you for that.
Sir.
So one of the aspects that I thought was really outstanding was that you also had what the mother had to deal with, and the perspective from the parent, the helplessness that you feel when you're trying to help your child, and you kind of hit the wall and there's nowhere to go. Now, was that adapted from the play, or was that your vision?
Well, I mean, that was definitely a story I wanted to tell going into a film like this. And again, the amazing thing about the play was that was also included in it, showing the family's struggle, and especially coming around at the end to see what happens to that family after an event like this. And it was really important for me to especially show the mother's struggle, because so often you can hear in the news that, the parents didn't do anything or they missed out or whatever, but there are also many times where a parent hits a wall like that and they try and it just doesn't go their way, essentially. And then a book that really helped me out was called A Mother's Reckoning, which was written by Sue Klebold, who was Dylan Klebold's mother, who was one of the Columbine shooters. And it was a book, completely written by her and her story after everything that happened with Columbine. I remember I was in Arizona for a buddy's wedding, and me and all my buddies were sharing a hotel room, and I was like, oh, I'll take some time to read and research. And I'm sitting there like crying, reading this book, and all my childhood friends are like, what's up with you, dude? Just research. So, yeah, I mean, the family aspect was something that was very important. And Carly Pope, who played the mom, did a just brilliant job.
The entire cast was great. The
Yeah.
performances were great.
So thank you for that as well. Anybody else? Yeah.
It was a wonderful film. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention something about Sue Klebold. I'm on the board of directors for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in San Diego, and Sue was on the board in Colorado. She's a really wonderful woman. And what came from her trauma and tragedy with her son was that she turned it into helping other people through the journey of surviving, being a suicide loss survivor,
Yeah.
and also being the mother of a school shooter.
Yeah.
For people who've gone through that journey and all the trauma, they can turn their lives into something of hope and light. So I appreciate you shedding light on the difficulties in the system, because it's very real.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work and
Thank you. It's amazing that connection is here in the audience, and that's the hope for this film, is to have somebody like you who knows that struggle for a lot of people to appreciate it, and to hear those words really means a lot to me. So thank you. We got that all the way in the back, and then you first.
Hi, I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was a very strong and powerful film. There is a big twist in the film about the dad. I wanted to ask how you dealt with showing that twist, and also the use of the dad specifically and the junior ROTC character as sort of like red herrings on who the actual shooter might be. Can you just talk a little bit about those aspects?
So I wanted to just put the audience in the perspective of Andy throughout part of the film, because ultimately I want the audience to empathize with Andy's character, and so to do that, I just had to play with, those sort of tropes, the red herrings, and the sort of, to help throw the audience off. So, your understanding as to why Andy's like, you know, sort of taking these actions. As far as like the actual storytelling part of that and like the sort of like technique of like making sure the audience didn't know that the father was real or whatever. I don't know, I just did a lot of editing and hoped for the best, and I hope it worked. So, all right, man, thanks for that question. And then I think you had a question here?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about a certain part in the movie. The pastor had like a really obscure role in my opinion, and I wanted to ask if you were trying to sort of have a play on how people use religion as a sort of means of a way out, and was that like your goal? Were you intending to kind of make it kind of like that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for a lot of people, yeah, religion is their source of community, and religion tends to be their source of helping them through something. And I had, again, through a lot of research, reading stories on parents who had kids who had severe behavioral issues or going through a mental health crisis and kind of drawing some, you know, sort of bad looks from the town or acting out in the church, you know, where the church would sort of turn their back on them or try to direct them to another church. And then that's, you know, that's a person losing their whole community. And so the, you know, the main theme and focus of the film was, you know, basically what happens when a kid doesn't have the community he needs, or she needs, or they need. And so I thought the religious aspect was important because it's big in our country, and it just felt like, and in Kentucky, yeah, and in a lot of small towns in Kentucky that I went through and stayed in and everything, like you can find 4 or 5 churches in a small town of, you know, not many. So it was a theme I wanted to work with and play with, and that's what ended up on screen. So, yeah, thank you. And then person next to her, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about the distribution strategy. Are you guys going to show it in like a streaming service or?
Yeah, do you work for Netflix or? Come on and grab it. We're still working on that. We're talking to some sales agents and distributors, and you know, hoping for the best to get out there, and yeah. So, yeah.
That might help, hopefully.
Yeah.
Get some more attention. I'd like to thank the Mental State for not only honoring us with their work and being respectful for such delicate subject matter, because obviously you have to consider the families involved with actually the subject at hand. But it was just a beautifully done piece, and we recognized it from all different levels, obviously. We had a few different categories that they took. They swept the Catalina Film Festival, but ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to talk to me after, feel free. And yeah, it's funny. I think a couple more portraits they want for you guys up there, and I need you to sign the wall in the projection booth, and we will wrap up the 2022 Catalina Film Festival tomorrow. There's one more panel. And on September 30th through October 9th, you can see a lot of all of these films online. So support the filmmakers and check it out. So thank you very much. Thank you.